Hi there. So what we're going to do today is a walkthrough on NanoDLP and how to get up and running and printing. And I'm going to go through the process that I use, and I'm going to cover 2 or 3 different ways to do the same kind of thing. What I'm going to do is use firstly how to assemble a plate in NanoDLP and how to use the same model, and I'll show you what I've picked. Not very complicated. It's just a ring, and I'm going to show you how, and well, for a start, why that is in flash print. And I've got here B9 Creator as well, which does the same kind of thing. And for some things, the one does work a little bit better than the others. It's just that the way that they generate supports sometimes are a little bit better in the one than in the other one. And obviously what you can do is do plates in Nano DLP as well, because it has got its own built-in editor, as you can see here. So exit from there. Right, so for a start, you want to get your model and you want to put it together in such a way that it prints nicely. Now, it's very different from FDM how you would print. In FDM, if you wanted to print this model, what you would do is essentially stick it flat on its side, something like that, and right there, and you would stick it on the build platform flat and have it print up. Now in SLA, it's a little bit different, and you generally want to go for something along the lines of around 45 degrees. The reason is the way that it builds and the way that it releases from the film. If it's flat, it creates a large surface area that has to release, and it's got a large chance of actually being pulled off the build plate and not completing successfully. So you put it at an angle like this so that it gradually builds up and creates the model a little bit by little bit to get to where it is. In theory, something like this ring, you could actually print it completely upright like this, and it would work. If I say move, you also don't necessarily want things like this flat on the build plate. You actually want it suspended a little bit above so that you can build up a scaffold that actually supports this in mid-air. Right, so what I'm going to do is put it at an angle. It's a little bit off the build plate, and I'm actually going to drop that down to about there, and I'm going to go into support. So what's nice about flash print is it'll automatically go and do supports, and for the most part they actually quite good. What you want to look out for is these little random things here. So select delete, take that one out, take that one out, that one out. So you just want to go pull out the random ones you don't actually want in there. But overall, that is quite a strong support structure. Now, for this ring, I might try and print it in both and have it do the support structures in the 2 different ways. I'm not all that happy with what this has done here, because that's quite deep in there, and I think that that's going to be quite hard to break off. You can go and adjust these, but what I'm going to do for now is actually just switch over to B9 Creator for this one, and I'm going to rotate this 45, and as you can see, it's in mid-air. And what is nice about this one is when you now go over to supports, you'll see, yeah, you can see that line. So as you can see that line, you can see the bottom point. And if it does that, you want to go and pull that out, and you want to take your model and move it up a bit. The reason it did that is because the model was too close to the build plate. It actually put the support through the bottom, and that is going to be a problem when you want to actually print it. So you've got light, medium, and heavy supports. For something like this ring, light supports are great. And as you can see there, we're going to say right there on the bottom, and that one also. So essentially what you're going to do is just pick anything. Now from here you can see that it doesn't really do those, but I do want this to have as much support as it needs to actually print. Let's check. So you can see as you move that line up, you just want to try and find any islands and add those supports in as you work your way up. Now that's obviously not enough support. Well, it's obvious, but that's not enough supports to actually make it work, because that will pull loose. And what I want here is actually just to build enough to get this all the way up. Then what I'm going to do is at the bottom, I'm going to add supports as it goes up to make sure that this supports all the way around. And you can see that is more likely to succeed. You can go and add more supports to this as you want. What you can also do, if you don't want to clean up too much over there, is actually go and try and put them in here. Now that you'd obviously need to sand out the middle, and you can see there actually when it failed that one, red means it's not going to be able to do a support, and then you can see as it goes green you can add the support in. Now it's very light, that's probably more than enough supports, but I reckon I'm going to leave it like that. And if you go back to the model, there you can see it's now got those supports in there. Now what you want to do from here is take that support and export. So you're going to export it from here. I'm just going to go stick it on the desktop. And call that ring D9. Save that and close it. And for good measure, let's go and take this one as well. And you can see the supports are in some ways quite similar. What's nice is these cross sections in here, which makes the scaffold self-repairing. So if it disconnects here and it gets to here, as that one comes in, it'll probably start repairing the scaffold as it goes up. And that is quite nice about the supports in here, which is why I think when you start off, try and use this one as well as the other one. There is a so you can do the base diameter. So if I do the base diameter like that, if I go and add that one I added in actually has a thicker base on it. How that works is it creates a larger surface area for it to stick to as it goes on there. Then your support options, so you can do a thinner tip. We're looking at something that goes around the finger, so those connections look very, very big. You can bring that down, but they are 0.5 millimeter, and making them smaller might not necessarily work. Anyway, so there's the other ring. Let's minimize it for now. And what I'm going to do now is in Nano DLP, when you start off, it's going to show you the screen over here. And what you've got are your various areas in our plates are essentially print jobs, and each plate represents a entire print. Z-axis control is the control, and if you look on the bottom left here, you can actually see the printer that's connected to this machine. So if I hit floor, it's going to home it, and then you can see it go. You can see the machine is actually behind me as well, and then I've just got the second camera that's close up on me so you can see it, and that'll go on home. Okay, and that's pretty much done. So I've added into custom buttons here. That one just moves up 10, that one moves up 50, and the reason for that is once the print is finished, and you can actually see behind me that the build plate is raised up a bit, and raising it up like that is quite nice. How mine is set up as well is that the G code lifts at the end of the print job, lifts the print to the top, and it actually sits there and waits for me to come and take it off. So that is your axis control, and I'm going to drop that back down to the floor, and you'll see that that moves down when you home a little bit slower and gets all the way to the bottom again. Projector calibration I'm not going to fiddle with now, but it is something you're going to want to probably look at once you get into it a little bit more, so that you can get some really, really nice prints. Small prints like this, you generally don't have to worry about that too much. Right, now the other thing is your resin profiles. You can go and add a resin profile. I just generally clone one that I find is working for something, and if it's a new resin, I'll actually go and spend some time with it. The Formlabs ones take very, very long to cure and very long to print. This one here, which is the resin I've got in there at the moment, which is the 1 hour clear, and you'll see there I've actually got 2 profiles for 1 hour clear, and the one I've just named long, which does a 5.5 second per layer time, where I've got a 4.5 second layer time here. If I go into that, you'll see I actually do make notes in here and a description as I print. If you look at the long one, this one I've got as a profile where at 5.5 seconds, which adds a second to what I've got the other one running, I started this off as a test profile to try and get better detail and reliability in the print so that it doesn't undercure, and I'll use that if dimensional accuracy isn't all that important, and I'd rather have nice detail and more chance of the print actually finishing. Now let me go into some of the other details here with regards to this. You'll see here you've got burn-in layers. There's 4 of them. They're 50 microns each, and they're going to cure for 70 seconds each. It's going to wait 12 seconds before the print. 3 seconds after, it's going to lift 3.5 millimeters, and it's going to wait for 3.5 seconds. And what that does is, as it lifts, your resin is quite not necessarily runny. Like the Fun2Do resin is very runny and flows quite quickly, where the One How resin is quite viscous and it actually takes a long time to run. So you want to give it time to actually just flow back in and cover that. And as the build plate goes down, it's going to squash that back in, and you want to give it time to settle. And that's what these settings essentially do, is the time to lift it off and then wait for it to actually run. And then as it goes back down, you want to let it settle for a bit before you start printing the next layer. So when you look at your normal layers, which are the ones after those first four, I'm staying with 50 microns there. Cure time is down to 5.5 seconds. And you can see that I've got a 1.5 second wait time, half a second wait time after it finishes printing. And I'm lifting a little bit higher there, so I'm lifting it 6 millimeters, and therefore the wait after the lift is also quite short. So that's what I find works with this, and you can actually go and fiddle with a lot. And there are a lot of settings in here. The other one that you're probably going to work with at a fairly early stage is anti-aliasing, and you may want to either turn that on or off. I've got that turned off. What anti-aliasing does is your prints work on a LCD screen. The LCD screen has pixels, so each one of those pixels, obviously there's a pixel next to it. It's going to try as accurately as possible to shine the image on every single one of those pixels. But anti-aliasing will turn the pixel that's next to the one on that image on at a fraction of a percentage, just to give it a little bit of dimming. So it makes it a little bit more fuzzy. Now, it gives you a better print surface with a little bit of loss of detail. And depending on, again, what you want from your print, you might either turn that on or off. So that is the kind of thing that you want to look at when you're setting up your resin profiles, which are done here. So you'll go and set one up for each and every one of your resins, and in many cases for different colors. The different colors can be used as a basis for another one, but you want to go and make sure that, for instance, there I've got the black resin and the clear resin, and you'll see their times are actually very, very similar. Obviously, like I said, the Formlabs resin, there you can see the actual working layers are just over 20 seconds, 20.5 seconds each. So that's 15 seconds per layer more, which is a much longer time to print. The Fun2Do resins, there you can see, and their times are very, very different. So 25 microns at 4 seconds, 50 microns at 6 seconds. But again, you want to find, because all of these machines, the LEDs might be a little brighter, a little bit less. The LCD could be a little bit different, and each one works differently. So, but you do need to customize it for your own machine to make it work properly. Right, so those are the basics of it. The rest of it I'm not going to cover now. All I'm going to do now is actually add a plate. So when you add a plate, you can go and just add it in here. I like to add it in this one, and you'll see why in a short while. When you bring this in, and this one will be fine when it comes in, but you'll notice that it's actually at a 90-degree angle from where I put it in here. If you look at it on here, you'll see that ring is actually lengthways. Here it's sideways. Add supports in here, rotate. Now for this model, this doesn't make any difference, but if it's a bigger model and you actually put it in sideways, you'd have to go and rotate it in here to actually put it back at the angle that you want it to be. So that's pretty much it. So you're going to do your layout, and what you want to do is make sure, when you look at it from the side, that this is flat on the plate. You don't want that off. And B9 is quite a culprit there, because when you saw that first one and it had that supports going through, it'll go and stick it on here, and this base here will be 2 or 3 millimeters off the bottom. And when you go and generate the plate, you'll see your first 20 layers are blank, and that is obviously going to be a failed print because there's nothing for it to print on. So you go and do your layout. Like I said, you can go and do supports in here and add them in. I just find that something like B9 or Flash Print is a lot better at creating supports. So I go and do it in here, bring it in here with the supports on, and once you're happy with it, you go and add the plate in. So you add it in, and that's going to take you here. So you're going to get a name for it. So I'm going to say ring braided, and you're going to then go and pick your resin profile that you've set up as well. So I'm going to leave it on the default. In fact, I'm going to make it the long profile so that it gives me those 5.5 second times in there. Everything else I'm pretty much going to leave as it was. Submit it in, and there you can see there's now the profile in here. Now the profile is in, but this isn't ready to print yet, because if you go and look at layers, there aren't any. You need to actually go and recreate it and tell it to generate those layers. That'll go and say, right, processing, you can start printing, because as this process is here, it's building up those layers. And if you go and look at them now, there you can see the first layer, and those go up, and then you can see the smaller ones. And as it does the layers, and that's where it's busy done. And once it's done, it'll actually give you your estimates, like you can see on this one here, where it has your print time, how much resin, and how much that's going to cost you. Once it's done with that, it'll give you all of that. Now, the other thing is, you might have previously generated something, like there is a Viking ring that I've previously printed. You may want to go and change the resin, because this has now been printed in the one. I might go and decide that I want to change that over. And if I stay with a 50 micron layer print, it's not going to change anything. Let me go and say that one's also a 50 micron. And as long as the base layers are the same, it'll be happy. And I think it might actually just wait for this to finish processing before it'll tell me. But if you look down here, if you change it, it'll tell you that you need to regenerate the plate for the new printing data. And depending on how much changes, it'll ask you to change that. That one's almost done. If you change from a 50 micron layer to a 100 micron layer, obviously it has to now go and recreate every single one of those layers. So it has to rebuild that thing from a start. Whereas if you stay with the same layer heights, the images that it needs to print are going to stay the same, and it actually knows that it doesn't have to regenerate every single one of those images. All it has to do is adjust for the different time in the resin. So under your resin profile, all it needs to do is adjust for that now having 6.5 seconds to cure, as opposed to 5.5 seconds or 4.5 seconds, depending on what resin you're coming from. Right, let's see. That looks like it's almost done. And you can see it has done them all. All right, so at this point in time, you are ready to print. It's probably just doing some background processing still, which will finish in a bit. But as I said, when it starts processing the first few layers, you can actually start that print. And what I'm going to do is show you you look under my setup, I've got some startup G code here, which will actually go and home it. And at the end, you can see I've got the to raise the platform at the start of it up to 185, which is the top of the build plate. All right, that is ready to start printing now. I'm going to fill up the resin in here and get this going. And you can see me working up close now. It is important that you wear gloves because the stuff is nasty, and getting it on your hands, it's a pain to clean. And I don't know how the sound is from over here. Okay, so gloves. What I do, right, so what I do with my resins, once I take them out of the big bottle, I get a whole lot of these little ones and I actually go and mark them with the resin I've got in there. These are 60 ml bottles and they're whole enough to actually do the print plate. And then you can actually see that print plate is now ready to be done. So what I've got under here, I've actually got a second vat, and this has got resin in. I actually keep it at angle, and there you can see I kept it under the hood so that it stays nice and running. And there you can see as it runs, see that empty space over here. That's what I mean by viscosity. It takes a while for the resin to actually fill up all those gaps as it gets there. And the time is what keeps it there. So, and it's still clean. And I'm going to move up. There you go. So the bolt plate is moved up. And that can come off. The bolt plate with the resin going on. Okay, so resin on. Now, when I fill up the resin inside the vat, so there's an empty vat. If it sits down, this squeezes down and actually squeezes the resin up on the sides. And I try and get it to the resin sitting level with the top of this plate, but I try to not let it run over, and you can see it does, because when it gets in there, there's little screws and stuff, and it's quite difficult to clean. So if it's a big print, I'll try and keep it just under or level with this, and around 50 moles of resin is about right for that. And then as the print progresses and it's a little bit higher up, I can actually add a little bit more resin into the side, and it'll still sit under the plate. And that's just how I try and keep it so that it's a bit easier to clean up afterwards as well. Leveling the build plates is something you need to do if it's your first time as well. These screws here, can you see? Yeah, you can see on the other camera. You want to do 1, 2, 3, 4, loosen them off. This plate can then move up loosely, and when it's loose, you're going to home it and leave it off. It's going to drop down to where it is. You're then going to press this down a bit, and once the build plate is sitting on the bottom, you then tighten these up again, and that creates your build plate level at the bottom. Okay, so that's the build plate down to where it is, and this one has got the resin in it just sitting under there. Now I don't know if you'll be able to see that, but it's just under the top of that build plate and it's pretty much ready to go. So when you start printing, you'd actually just put the lid on top of it. You don't want light going into that because UV will cure the resin and it will be a problem. For this, I am going to just leave it open and show you pretty much from there. You're going to say print from the start, and that is really as hard as it is. Okay, so that's printing. As you can see behind me, the lid is now on, and that's for the duration of the print time. I'm going to let this print, and then for the third part of this video, and if you haven't seen the first part, there's a part 1 to this video, which is actually the setup of NanoDLP and getting things going. But the third part is going to be where I take this off the build plate. Hopefully there'll be something on it. There is a tendency sometimes these things come off and there's absolutely nothing on it. What you can do with NanoDLP while I'm at this is you can actually pause the print, go to the Z-axis control, and that's partially why this is here. Move it up 50. It'll then raise it out, and you can actually see that everything's on there, and then you can actually resume the print, and it'll drop back down and continue the print. I'm very wary of doing that, and I don't really like doing that. It is a much bigger move than it's used to, so when it drops back down, there is a little bit of a layer shift sometimes, so I try and not do that too much. You can actually set up the resin profiles in here to do a jump layer. There we go. Jump layers where you can actually have it every, say, 10 layers move up 20, and it actually raise up so you can see what the build plate looks like and then drop back down again. I don't do that either. It is something I should probably play with a little bit more. But anyway, yeah, I'm going to leave this to print, come back, and then I'll do a part 3, which will be a whole video on its own again, which will be taking it off the build plate and how I treat it with regards to the IPA and post curing and things like that. All right, see you in a bit.